Hi, and welcome to our continuing podcast series at Tap Into Westfield. Today we have a very special guest. We have Joe Nolan, a longtime radio personality in the New York City area. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thank you, sir. How are you?
Well, I'm doing great, so it's great to have you here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now?
Well, I'm still on the radio doing traffic in New York City. 38 years I've been doing that. Was started in Union, right up the street, with shadow traffic in 1979. Seems like such a long time ago. It's like 5 years, five lives ago almost. And now I'm on 103.5 KTA with Cubby and Caroline in the morning. I'm the PA announcer for Rutgers football. If you go to the stadiums and you hear that guy saying, "That's a Rutgers first down," that's me. And same thing with the Jets. I do the Jets. And then I have my own small little company called New Jersey Internet Radio. And what we do is we go around and do high school sports during the school year. Based pretty much we're on from August until into the end of July, or end of June, I mean. What we do is we do radio play-by-play of high school sports, and that's a blast. I love doing that. It's a lot of fun.
Well, since this is a local show, why don't we talk about that? What's happening in high school sports?
Westfield's got a pretty good run going, huh? 32 in a row in football. They are probably again the favorite to win North Jersey Section 2 Group 5. They've got a great team. The quarterback's a kid. He's a sophomore. Which is great for them if he doesn't hurt them this year, which he's not. And juniors, by the time he's a senior, he's going to be something. They've got a really really good team. That kid Valabella is something. He's a stud. He's from what I understand being recruited by. Apparently he's really smart too. He's being recruited by a lot of the Ivy League schools. And they just keep going. They're playing Scotch Plains this weekend, who they should pretty much easily handle. And then they go into the playoffs. And then they've got Plainfield on Thanksgiving, a game we will be doing on the website, njir.net. And then the playoffs. And can they run off another 12 in a row? 3 consecutive state championships? We'll see. They've got Piscataway now in their group, which is a monkey wrench, which hadn't been there in the last 2 years. Piscataway is very good. Bridgewater is still very good. Elizabeth is good. And those are the top 4. You're going to wait and see what happens.
So can you tell me about the Thanksgiving game? What's special about that game?
Oh, there's so many. Everything about that game is special. They've been playing for 100 years, a little more than 100 years now, Westfield and Plainfield. Since Thanksgiving, it's kind of a unique sort of story, is that they played in 1941, Westfield and Plainfield. And what happened was there was a bad call, and right this second, I can't remember if Plainfield left. Their coach got so upset that he said, "We're leaving." And they left. So the game was forfeited to Westfield. Westfield got so upset at what they did that they said, "We're not playing you ever again in anything." World War II comes along. World War II's over. And they said, "Okay, well, we'll play on Thanksgiving." And from the end of World War II to today, they have played every year on Thanksgiving. It's not one of the longest Thanksgiving running consecutive games, but because they've played over 100 years, it's one of the longest rivalries in the state. The Thanksgiving Day game, it's everything. It's America. I mean, football on Thanksgiving. It happens all across the country. Every morning on Thanksgiving, high school football teams play each other. In New Jersey, because of the way the playoffs are now, it's become less and less and less and less. But you love these teams. Like in Union County, you have Roselle and Roselle Park. They still play. You have Westfield and Plainfield that still play. You've got a lot of teams all around the state that still play out in Warren County, Phillipsburg, and Easton, Pennsylvania. They play each other. That game was on ESPN a few years ago. So it's. I remember even when I was a kid. I remember getting up in the morning, and when the game was here in Westfield, because there was just too much going on in my house at Thanksgiving for my father to drive me to Plainfield, so that wasn't happening. But we moved here. We moved to Westfield when I was 8 years old, and I lived on Nottingham Place, literally right down the street from the football field. So I'd walk up there with my friend from around the corner, and we go. And we'd watch the game, and you come back. My mom was in the kitchen doing stuff, and I'd leave, and she probably loved it because I was out of her way. And we'd go to the game, and we'd come back. The place smelled like turkey, and my grandparents were there, and it was always such a big day. And I still get that feeling when I walk into that building. I mean, back then, when I was a kid, from 68, 70, 72, 74. Westfield High School football was a juggernaut. I mean, they never lied. They just didn't lose. They went years and years and years and years without losing a football game. I think they had 48 in a row without a loss, or a couple of ties in there. But I mean, that's just. I mean, now you think about it. This team's got 32 in a row. That's that's phenomenal. This team had another year and a half more back then, and then I think they lost one, and I think they won like 26 or 7 more in a row. So it was a great time growing up in this town back then, and very lucky to be able to have lived here and been able to be a part of that run back then as a fan.
And this year's game is in Westfield?
Yo, absolutely. Every other year, this year's in Westfield. We did last year's game at Plainfield. They were so nice to us. Oh my gosh, the Plainfield people were great. And then we did the year before we did. So this will be our 3rd year in a row that we're doing Westfield and Plainfield. The difference is, though, now I'm getting up and stuffing the turkey and then going to the game and working, coming home. It's a lot. Things have changed a lot.
So what do fans who are going to the game or plan on going to the game on Thanksgiving, what do they have to look forward to? What's special about the Thanksgiving Day game?
It's actually, to be honest, there's not probably a lot of.
It's not like a turkey trot before or a parade or anything.
No. I mean, they really don't do anything different than they normally do. But the thing is that Plainfield has not been good at all for the last few years, and that kind of takes a little bit away from it. But it's still a rivalry, and you never know. Those rivalry games, you never know what could happen. I think this group of kids, I think Westfield has won the last 3 years in a row. I'd have to go and double check that, but I think they won the last 3 years in a row. Yeah, they had to because they had the streak. Yeah, so they've won the last 3 in a row. But it started with Plainfield 3 years ago. So these seniors were freshmen. They would have won all 4 of these games if Westfield wins this year. There are going to be seniors on that Plainfield side that aren't going to want that to happen. Westfield might be still in a playoff run. If they are, a lot of times they hold some of their better players back. You never know what could happen. But it's a great time. Place is usually pretty full. It's packed. And if you can't, and that's where we come in, if you can't go to the game, well, you just put it on get your computer, just put it on and listen. It's great background stuff. We have a good time doing it too.
And growing up in Westfield, what were some of the other things you enjoyed doing growing up in Westfield?
Growing up, we used to, again, Nottingham Place was kind of close to everything. So, we'd get on our bikes and bike into town, and we would go to the music store, the music staff, it was called. We would go to the sports center, which was right next door to the music staff, and then you go across the street to Ferraro's. Back then, you could get a slice of pizza and a Coke. Actually, I think it was Pepsi. Now I think about it, it was Pepsi. They didn't have Coke. It was Pepsi. It was a slice of pizza and a Pepsi, and it was like $2. I don't think you can walk in the door to Ferraro's now and not spend $2. Chuck's not going to like me saying that, but it is. It's a whole different world now there. But it's that was one of my favorite things, just going to downtown. The Jolly Trolley was my growing up and all the way through until they closed it not too long ago was one of my favorite spot in town. Always was, always has been. I remember going in there so many times with my parents, and before they would go into the city a lot. When they would come home, my mom would go and get a big giant cheeseburger, cheddar burger, and they used to take an ice cream scoop. This is years ago. An ice cream scoop in that soft cheddar cheese, and that's what they would put on top of the cheddar burger, and it'd be this big giant glob. It was. I used to laugh at her. I said, "Oh, you like some beef with your cheddar, But that was always good, and it was a fun place. I didn't go to Holy Trinity. I didn't go to Westfield High School. I went to Holy Trinity High School. I was the last graduating class of Holy Trinity High School before they closed it in 1976. Where the grammar school is now is where I went to high school. So that was kind of a thing where I didn't know a lot of people in town. I knew everybody in my little school, but outside of that, I wasn't. I didn't know a lot of people at Westfield High School. But
don't you have a special story about the Jolly Trolley in terms of the relationship you have with your girlfriend now?
Yes, that was the first place. Well, back up. When I met Marianne, she went to Holy Trinity. She was a freshman, and I was a senior. Took her to my senior prom. Did all that, dated that whole time. Went into part of my freshman year at Seton Hall. But you go to college and ended up dating other people and then marrying other people and then getting divorced, and then we got back together about 6 years ago, and we met at the Jolly Trolley. It was funny. We went back in there. I kind of lied. I said to her, I kind of lied. I did lie. I said I sent her an email, and I said I'm meeting my buddy John Dugan, and who a lot of people know from town. John ran the Pop Warner, not the Pop Warner, it's a PAL here in Westfield, football, for little kids football for years and years and years. And I said to her, I'm meeting him for a drink at the Trolley. I said, I'm going to be, I have nothing to do if you're around. So she shows up, and we sat in the Trolley at the bar, and it was like it was the next day. I always tell the story. It was like I had dropped her off at her mom's the night before, and she sat down, and the rest is history. But the Jolly Trolley was our favorite spot forever. Always. We always went there. First time I took a girl out to dinner, it was her, and it was at the Jolly Trolley.
And so you've been in Westfield for how many years now?
We moved here when I was 8. Then I moved out when I was right around 2000, and then lived out of town until about 6 years ago, and then I'm back. So and it was good. Coming home was it was what I needed to do.
And being home now, what are your favorite places in Westfield now?
It's still Ferraro's, although it costs significantly more than $2. But I love Ferraro's. I always have. I think they have great food. Whenever you go in there, you always have a good time. 16 Prospect, I love too, with the boils and that little tiny bistro there. And we get there early because I laugh because I have to be in bed so early. My night is. When we have dinner probably around 5:36, then we clean up, and then there's Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, and then I go to bed. So when we go out early, and there's always a chair or a table, it seems, outside. And Marianne and I love sitting out in front of that restaurant and just having a cocktail and having dinner and then and some of the other things. I mean, we don't go very far. I mean, we don't go into the city very often, hardly at all. We'll go to Crohn's in Mountainside and Public House in Mountainside, and we'll go over to the place in Scotch Plains, the Irish Bar. I always forget the name of it. On the main drag there, we go there, and so I mean, it's local.
In terms of your career, you're a radio personality, but you specialize in you specialize in traffic.
Yes.
And what are some of you've worked with some really outstanding and legendary voices in New York radio?
Starting with Dan Ingram and Bob Grant and Ross Britton and oh boy, I mean, there's just dozens, and I mean, there's literally dozens. I mean, I've been on the air with Cousin Brucey, with Ron Lundy, with a guy that older people would remember, William B. Williams, who used to be on WNEW, Willie B. Williams. I was on with him a few times. There's just so many of them I can't even remember. But of course, the biggest one, Scott Shannon. I mean, I've been with Scott. I was worked with Scott for on and off for the last 27, 28 years. And now I'm on with another, Cubby Bryant is another big name in New York radio who I'm working with now, and Carolina Bermudez, who is his partner there. Cubby and Carolina in the morning, but yeah, Scott Shannon was but I mean, even like the other guys at CBS FM, Bill Lee, Dan Taylor, legendary New York radio names. Jim Kerr I worked with for about 2 weeks. Actually, it was funny. I saw him over at iHeartRadio not long ago. And he came up to me, and when he talks to you, I don't know if you remember when he's still on the air, but I mean, back in the old days at PLJ, he had this very deliberate kind of approach to talking. And he said, "Hello, young man." And I look at him, and I said, "You're me?" He said, "Do you remember who the first DJ in New York was you worked with?" And I looked at him, I said, "Yeah, it was you." And he said, "Yeah." And then I said to him, "Yeah, about 2 weeks. Didn't they fire you right after?" His other sidekick. I mean, he worked with Todd Pettengill forever and ever and ever. And Todd, who is a comedic genius, was always, the number 2 guy. And then Patty Steele, who did the news, and me were the other 2 foils. And then he had Brad Blanks. And then when Scott left PLJ and came over to CBS FM, That's another story that I can't tell you. He came over to CBS FM, and we kind of developed my part of the show developed a lot more. I became more. I'd never be as funny or as quick or as comedically genius as Todd ever was, but I became more almost sort of kind of like that, more of his second guy in the room, and Patty was more of the second person in the room, but the two of us kind of shared that, and it worked out great. I mean, he's the number one station in New York, number one morning show in New York, so it's worked out very, very well. He has a kid lives down in Homedale that helps me with the high school stuff. He calls him Kermit the Wonder Frog. And his name is Trevor Martin. He does the games with me on the radio with Glenn Keller, and he's taken some of that now that I'm gone, and the weather guy takes some of it too, John Elliott. So it's an ensemble. It's still sort of a zoo, but not really. It's still sort of Z100, but not really. It's a Z Morning Zoo. It's an 80s Z Morning Zoo, 2017 style. No more cymbals and drums.
Are you a big rock fan?
Yeah, I'm a big music guy. I'm not. I'm more. I'm more pop than rock. Although I tell you what, it is fun now being on KTU because I hear the current stuff, and which when you're on CBS FM, the most current records from 1999. And being on KTU now, you hear all the current stuff with Taylor Swift and Ed Sheeran and all those people, and it's great. It's great to be in part of that music because we're on PLJ. We played all that stuff.
And we don't have much time left, but let's talk about something that everybody in this area deals with: traffic. Do you have any recommendations or for fighting traffic? Should we go with the news, listen to on the radio for your traffic reports, or waves, or what should we do?
The radio, when you're in your car, the radio is still the best first place you should go for traffic, no doubt. There's first of all, you're not supposed to even touch your cell phone when you're in the car anyway. So you know what? It is the absolute best place to get up to the minute, accurate traffic information. The downside to it is that if you're on some road somewhere and there's an accident and the Long Island Expressway is closed, well, we're going to talk about the Long Island Expressway. That's the downside to it. The other thing too is that none of these sites are omnipresent. They say they have traffic every. No, they don't. Nobody does. We don't. Nobody does. But you do the best you can. You try to get as much out there as you can in the amount of time that you're allotted. But around here, you know what? I always say to people, the best thing, absolute best way to get to New York City and to get to Newark or anywhere up and down that train line is the train. There is no better way. Westfield is one of the reasons why Westfield property values and everything else are the way they are is because they have the Raritan Valley line. We have the Raritan Valley line. And once they get to the point of where they're going to be able to put more single seat rides into the city, direct without having to change in Newark, you're going to get more and more people. And it's a lot harder than some people think it is. It's not an easy thing. It isn't. You just can't put more trains out there. There's capacity at Penn Station. There's capacity in the tunnels between New York and New Jersey, and it's not just the tunnels either. There's only two tracks. Once you get past the Caucasus into the city, there's only one track in, one track out. So it's a lot different than people think. Well, why can't they just put more trains out? Why can't they just get? They can't because they can't. It's just not physically possible for them to do it. 20 years from now, if they build those two more tunnels, great. Long Island Railroad, when they start to put more trains into Grand Central instead of Penn Station, I'm sure you're going to see more then. But for now, it is what it is. But the Raritan Valley line is still one of the best lines on New Jersey Transit, and the Westfield train station is one of the best train stations in the whole system.
Do you have any interesting stories about traffic, like the most amount of traffic you've ever seen, the biggest backup you've ever seen, anything that would be a good closing story for traffic?
The biggest backup I ever saw, without doubt, was there was a propane truck that started to leak just on the other side of the George Washington Bridge going inbound in the Bronx. Well, it was, propane was coming out of it, and they shut everything down. Inbound, outbound, everything. It was about 10:30 in the morning, and they shut the bridge down. Well, by 2 o'clock, and this went on until like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. By 10:30, the inbound side of Route 80 then on the 95, was backed up almost to Dover. The New Jersey Turnpike, the delay started at exit 11 to get to the George Washington Bridge. You can't even calculate how long that is. And finally, all these guys, all these experts are all standing around looking at this thing. What do we do? What do we do? And I think they finally just said, well, just let all the stuff leak out and hope it doesn't blow up, right? This is. I don't know if this is urban legend or if it's true or not, but the story was that the truck driver found a hardware store, got a cork and a rubber mallet, climbed up on the truck and plugged it with the cork, and they got it off the road and they were able to drain it all out, and everything reopened.
But you still have the famous residuals after that, right?
Oh, it took all night. I mean, it was. I want to, and again, this was 82, maybe 83, and I do know that the delay, like I said, went all the way out to Dover on Route 80. It was exit 11 on the Turnpike, and I think it was almost to Connecticut on 95 coming the other way. I mean, what do you do? There's nowhere to go. And then when you have the Tappan Zee Bridge was all jammed up, you can't put tractor trailers through the Lincoln Holland Tunnel. So, I mean, what are you going to do? And that's the thing about this area, is that it's so fragile that one thing goes and it's out for a while, everything else gets screwed up. And, there's a guy who has a broken down truck in the Bronx, which is basically what it was, and you're in Woodbridge and you're stuck in the traffic, So
it's all connected. All these roads are connected.
Connected. The other one I remember too, and that I always thought was really, really funny was there was a truck on the New Jersey Turnpike that I don't know if he flipped over or but it was carrying bulls, and the bulls got loose on the turnpike, and they were able to corral almost all of them, but one took off, and he got about 8-9 miles up the turnpike. Finally, the state police were able to corral him, but then he just, for whatever reason, decided that this one state police car he didn't like, and he trashed the state police car. And I remember the New Jersey State Police were not happy about that, and they were not happy about us making fun of it. We weren't making fun of them. We were just, it was a funny situation. And this car got trashed, and that was one I remember. That was funny. One day too, Senator Lautenberg was giving out traffic surveys at the Lincoln Tunnel, and it backed up all the way. And Rush Limbaugh, there's another guy I work with. Rush Limbaugh was filling in for whoever was doing the mornings on ABC at the WABC when I was on there. And I don't know how I got in trouble with it, but Rush always has nicknames for a lot of different people, and he was calling Senator Lausenberg. and I started laughing, and then I got in trouble for laughing at Lausenberg. But I said, well, I didn't even do anything. It's one of those kinds of things. But yeah, it's been a lot of stuff, man. A lot of stuff.
Here's my final question. Have you ever been late for work yourself due to traffic?
No, not because of traffic. Well, you know what? Yeah, when we were at CBS FM, because that Holland Tunnel, they would just shut it down for no reason at all. And you'd be coming in, and they'd be cleaning up our cone. And then there'd be guys, they have these cones down as soon as you get into the tunnel. And there were guys who used to come along there in the middle of, this is 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and 4:30 in the morning. And these guys come along, and they'd hit all the cones. They deliberately hit all the cones. And it'd all be all over the place. And then they'd have to close the tunnel down, and cop would have to go out there and put all the cones back. And that would happen maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks. And finally, we were talking about it on the radio, because what happens is, and this is something that a lot of people don't realize, is that anybody who lives in New Jersey who works on the radio in New York, pretty much anybody, who works at either CBS Radio or at iHeartRadio, they use the Holland Tunnel every morning. So if something happens at the Holland Tunnel, they're all screwed. You're all, Jim Kerr, anybody else who lives all these guys who live in New Jersey who are going into all those radio stations, they're going to be late for work. And then it gets on, instead of one station, one guy getting stuck, maybe 8 guys got stuck, and it's on 10 radio stations. And the Port Authority hears that, and so what they did was they don't put the cones down anymore.
So you have like the interns doing the radio, being the DJs in the morning.
Yeah, I would know that wouldn't happen, but no interns.
Well, thank you very much. We had a good time today, and great for having you on. And
Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you very much, and hopefully you'll be on another time.
Absolutely. Perfect. I don't think you have to do much with that at all.